World history is stained with discrimination. Since the fall, mankind has struggled with its identity. When we're not working together to replace God with ourselves, we're squabbling over which of us is better and why. In the aftermath of 9/11, the United States briefly became a nation united in grief. But we also quickly turned to a nation divided by hate. According to the FBI, hate crimes against Muslim Americans jumped from 28 incidents in the year 2000 to 481 incidents in 2001. The media was filled with stories of Muslim Americans who were being attacked for no other reason than they looked like the people who had hurt us. If we look at history around the Second Temple era, we see an equally divided nation. The Roman Empire brought trade and relative peace to the region, however, the cost of which was heavy taxes and oppression. Roman rule was met by either acceptance, half-hearted compromise, or violence in varying degrees. In the midst of this was a Jewish culture that discriminated against women, Samaritans, and Gentiles. Ruler and subject, male and female, Jew and non-Jew. This was the world that Jesus was born into. This was the world that Jesus was born to change. The Gospels record how Jesus challenged the Jewish standards of the day, challenging their identity as God's only people, and proclaiming that through him, all people can enter the kingdom, a right that had been previously thought reserved for the Israelites alone. But Jesus not only spoke about inclusion, he also provided an example for his disciples and us on how to do it. In the story of the Samaritan woman, Jesus chose to pass through Samaria instead of avoiding it as most Jews would have. He then struck up a conversation with a woman of ill repute. The number of social boundaries Jesus crossed in that one conversation is staggering. But what's even more important is what he offered her. If you knew the gift of God, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water. Living water here represents the Holy Spirit, which coincides with eternal salvation. In a world that was divided by hate, God sent Jesus to bridge that gap. Jesus not only offered living water to the Samaritans, he later delivered on that promise when Peter and John returned to Samaria and laid hands on the people so that they received the Holy Spirit. So too should we, in the face of a world that since 9/11 has gotten more broken and more divided, be willing to cross social, racial, economic, political, really all boundaries, and proclaim the same good news that Jesus offered the Samaritan woman that day. For it's good news, not just for us, but for everyone, including the people we struggle most to embrace. With that idea in mind, let's move into our questions for this week. Our hope is that these questions, which are specific to this week's chapter in John, and the ideas we just talked about, will help everyone be able to engage in rich and heartfelt conversations about the topic at hand. We hope this helps everyone walk away from their cell group time or time studying, feeling like they learned something and that they have progressed in their walk with Jesus. So I'll read the question and then you'll see it on the screen. Feel free to then pause the video and chat with each other about the question. All right then, here's your first question. Think of your time spent reading John chapter 4 this week. Why was the way Jesus interacted with the Samaritan woman and then the royal officer out of character for a Jew? Okay, moving on to the second question. In the story of the Samaritan woman, Jesus asked for water from a woman belonging to a group of people who were considered unclean and were despised by the Jews. Are there people that you choose not to associate with because of their beliefs? Here's a tip. Think politics, sports, religion, etc. And finally, the third question. In the Gospel of Mark, Jesus commands us to go into all the world and preach the gospel to all creation. Mark 16:15. Jesus showed us how to do this in John 4. How do you see yourself following or disobeying this command in day-to-day life? And in what ways can you change your routine to better emulate Jesus? Hey, thank you everyone for tuning in, and have a great week.